Hey everyone, the snowmobile you just saw and the one you're looking at is the subject of this custom helmet paint job. With any paint job, sanding's always the first step, but with a carbon fiber helmet, I lightly sanded it, clear coated it, then sanded it again to ensure that I wasn't going to mess up any of the carbon fiber. This design has 5 elements to it. 4 of them are snowmobile parts, and 1 is the American flag. This is the rendering I did on my iPad just to get the basic idea down to see what the finished product would look like. The smooth skull wasn't requested, but I figured, hey, why not? I thought it would be cool, so I added it. I only have pictures of this part of the process because I wasn't doing any video at the time, and that includes the red and the Polaris on the back.
Welcome to my world.
And hey, welcome to my world. I'm going over the vinyl on this visor, and I usually use a little torch just to try to lay down any edges or gaps over top of bends that are sharp. And don't ask what's going on with the piggy bank skull, because I don't even know. It's still not finished. So this is supposed to have a kind of a rippled effect, so I'm going light and dark and leaving it a little light blue. I'm going to go back in with a darker blue. Still want some of the white to show up. It's going to look like a ragged flag. And this I don't know what I'm doing with. This is raw umber from my paint set. I'm going to darken the blue a little bit.
I drank 15 beers. That's a whole lot of blue in one night.
That's the end of the blue. I think I'm going to shadow these stars. Rip masking tape at the top of the visor is what created the ragged edges of the flag, and I didn't film the red stripe process. This is the finished product. I'm going to try to tape out this red area so I can start the details on the carbon fiber. Trying to twist the tape towards the edge of the red. And I'm going to come back and land it. As long as the tape edge is flat, even if this side wrinkles, it won't matter, obviously. But just for the heck of it, I put a little heat on it, calm it down. Alright, so I was about to put this mask on. I noticed there's shiny spots around this attachment here for the, I think it's the visor. I don't want to take any chances with the paint not sticking. So I'm just going to scuff it. Clearly it's in another light than where I sanded it, and I obviously didn't do a good job. So I'm going to tack this off. The belt drive, one side of the helmet. I made a vector cut profile from this image. Originally I thought I was going to have the belt drive and exhaust pipe on both sides of the helmet, But thank God through a text, Darren, the customer, told me he wanted it laid out exactly like the sled, with the belt on one side and the exhaust on the other. Due to some copyright issues, I am recording this voiceover so I can repost my video. So at this point, this vinyl mask is cut, and I'm trying to position it to where I can get the most impact out of it. I really wanted to be able to see both bolts and as much mechanical stuff as I can. And being I have it on clear transfer, it helps me kind of see what it looks like. So I could stick it without permanently sticking it and reposition it. So I go back and forth a few times till I finally land it to where I like the way it looks. I'm pleased where I have it positioned, and this is where I start to land the vinyl. So I'm working along the ridge there, which is the highest point and the most bends in it, and I'm working my way from the center out. Now I'm just concentrating on the areas that I'm going to be painting, and outside of that, if there's any wrinkles, it really won't matter. That stuff's just there as a mask so I don't get overspray on the helmet. I don't always land the vinyl completely. You can see there's some loose ends hanging off. What I'll do is get it down to where I like it, and then I'll remove the transfer tape from the side that's the most stuck down, pull it back, and then I'll sort out all the loose stuff after. I'm pulling back the transfer tape on a sharp angle, trying not to lose any of the little details. There's some pieces around the lettering, and there's some screw heads, stuff like that, so I'm trying to make sure none of that comes off. Now that the mask is pretty much down, I'll take an X-Acto knife and I turn it upside down so the blade's facing up, and I cut through the wrinkle. That way I don't cut into the helmet or damage anything, and that'll split the mask in half and I can lay it flat and they'll overlap each other. There was a couple pieces of belt drive that I removed before I did my painting. They were going to be faint looking, so it wouldn't matter if they just get dusted in. Now that everything's masked down and flat where I want it, I also went over it with a torch just to heat things up, get rid of some of the wrinkles and make sure it's secure. I'm going to mask the rest of the helmet out so I can start painting. Giving my airbrush a quick clean out. I always keep some scrap brushes around for scrubbing out the inside. There's always paint in there that I leave, that I'm a mess. But I took the time to clean up the bench a little bit, get my iPad out so I can use a photo reference. And this is the photo reference that I used to build this mask out of. And I'm going to mix up like a medium gray out of this Payne's gray. It comes from my paint kit. It's a urethane paint. I'm just going to drop a little bit of white in it. So I'm just going to use this as a base color. I'm just going to stick with these grays just to build the whole basic layout of the painting. I'm going to give it, see how thin it is. It's not bad at all, so I'm just going to work with that. So I'm just gonna start building the three-dimensional shapes and what I got laid out here. And obviously in the picture, this in the foreground is the brightest. So I'm just gonna give a quick layout of the back side of this. And then just so I can see this room here, and then I'll work on making it darker. I really should have unmasked it the other way. But I'm gonna get the bolts masked in and the washers and stuff, and then work my way back. I'm gonna try to make this look three-dimensional, and then pull the masks off one by one and do piece by piece. I'm not gonna go too heavy on this because I don't want it to get real thick. At some point or another, the white's gonna make the paint too thick. It's just a thicker pigment. I'm going to try to leave a little bit of the darker line around this washer. It's actually like a bevel. I'm going to work my way to the outside. There's plenty of gray in here. It'll keep in the airbrush, so if I put tape over it. So I thin the paint a little bit, add a little more white. That way it doesn't start spitting on me. So I'm gonna, right around this little bolts or a washer, I'm gonna try to pull all that stuff out. And then I'm gonna pull the edge of this stuff off. So right about here I have all my masks removed and a base of gray in to establish my three-dimensional shapes. Next is going in with a lighter shade of gray, more towards the white side, to establish my highlights. I always go in with white first, so I can sharpen everything up and push it back with a darker color of gray, not black, and never in with black. Here's where I'm adding the darker color, but I have to say, it's not pure black. This is a candy black. When I first put down the gray, I left enough darkness that there was a lot of tone there to create the three-dimensional images. I say don't use pure black or black, because once you put black down, it's very hard to cover it up. And if you try to cover it up, it's gonna get like a milky look to it. Figuring out your approach on some of these paint projects is stressful, and sometimes you just need to take a break, and that leads to this.
Ready? Yeah.
This was the photo I used for the reference for the cylinder heads on the top of the helmet. There's some elements missing, like the bolt heads, the spark plugs, the spark plug wires, the thermostat housing. These things I had to make up on my iPad, and I also created them in Illustrator so that I had a cut file to mask the helmet out. It just saved me a lot of time, believe it or not. As rough as it looks, you know, tweaking each line, it still saves time. I didn't have a lot of luck looking for a photograph of this motor assembled. This was my final Illustrator file that I used to cut on my plotter. Looking back now, I guess I could have just called Darren and got a photograph. I'm landing the plotted mask that I cut out of the cylinder heads, and you may ask why I go through all this work with the plotter, but it beats having to cut on the helmet with a knife after you draw it on and try to mask it off. And if I mess up or the helmet gets damaged, I have the file. So this is what you're looking at with the base gray down and the mask completely removed. From here it's just tuning up the lights and darks and adding color. I'm guessing I didn't focus the camera, but I kept this footage because you can see as I'm adding dark how it really defines the shape. And I figured I'd leave it in. I have no other footage, so I apologize. I switched airbrushes at this point, and that red airbrush on my table was spraying off to the right. That green box you see me holding corrects the bent needle that I had. It's called a sharpen air. If you airbrush, it's a must. This is about the finished product, the top, and then we're off to the last part, the expansion chamber. So this one didn't require any plotting or anything like that. It's just masking tape. Actually, there is a little bit of plotting. My logo's on there, so I lied. The key look in this area is the coloring. Everyone wants to see the burns from welding and stuff like that. So I started basically, with a light gray and a little bit of yellow and then into the blues, purples, and magenta. I think I maybe a little bit of yellow over top, and then just some defining. One thing I have to add, and I tell everybody, when you're doing these kind of paintings, it's any project, it's like being on an emotional roller coaster. Some things you do and you feel like you did good, and the next minute you add something else, and then you feel like you ruined it. And then you go back, and it always comes down to the dark colors, and then the dark colors bring it all back together again, and you feel good again. So that's just the process. Here's a graphic that never came to be. I went through this just thinking, I guess, in tape, and I was never happy, and I thought enough was enough. As I was doing this, I realized that the motor pieces were missing something, and it just looked like it was coming through a black hole, and I wasn't happy with that. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to add some metal framing around the exhaust and the engine, so it looks like you're looking through a window port. After the clear cured, I have to say removing some of the masking tape in the little nooks and crannies is almost as bad as sanding, and it's just as stressful because sometimes it's just like, man, you never know if something's going to let go or not. But that's what I'm doing here. This is the end of the process I went through on this helmet and the first view of the finished product. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for hanging in there. Please hit like and subscribe. And if you were interested in the paint that I used in this video, it's custom paints. Actually, the one that's on my shirt. They have a website. You can order my kit on there, which has a variation of colors that I use as the bases for almost all my paintings. And they're urethane paints, so thank you.
What? Look at this. Yeah. More. Other way.